Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you a Psychophage video. Apologies to the older monstrosities that have heard me talk about the Psychophage a couple of times before. But things have happened with it lately, and I think it's worth talking about if you should be bringing more of these in your list now. I, if you haven't picked up, do like Psychophages. 95 points, T9, 3 up, 10 wounds, 5 up, feel no pain, deadly demise 1, gives out a 6-inch aura of 6 up, feel no pain. Each time, this model makes a melee attack that targets a unit that is below starting, add 1 to the hit. If it is below half, add 1 to the wound. Has a flamer that is, whatever, D6 611. Has melee that is also whatever. But it has anti-psycho 4 up, devastating wounds, D6 plus 1, hidden on 3, strength 6, AP 1, damage 2. Now, D6 on any attack profile is not great. It's not awesome. So sometimes you will only have 2 attacks in melee and 1 attack on the torrent. And is it worth rerolling it? Probably never. But the thing that I'm about to say next is that the anti-psycho 4 up, surprisingly helpful. Will that be the thing that I think happened in the things that we're going to talk about? Probably not. But it is worth still mentioning that every now and again, you come across a psyker that is particularly hard to remove. Something like a Great Unclean One. Then you throw a Psychophage into it, and the Great Unclean One doesn't have a great Psychophage killing profile on its attacks. And not to say that you have that here, but all of a sudden, if you're just rolling 4s versus this giant psyker that previously was tough to remove, comes in handy. Now, am I saying to base your entire game plan around this one-off scenario for the damage output of the Psychophage? Absolutely not. But I would like to discuss again, um, one of my my little quirks, with list building, where I am a huge advocate for, yeah, take point scoring units, but do the ones that do shit, even when they aren't scoring points. Um, what do I mean by that? So, I don't think it's, I think I've made it known now. I don't particularly love single opportunity things. I don't particularly love lictors. I don't particularly love warriors, where it's like, hey, they're only in melee. Lictors, hey, I only really wanted you for the points. I would prefer a bigger screen. I would prefer something that can hit something and possibly screen. Something like that. That's what I mean by that. Right? Um, Now, in the way of the Psychophage, what do I mean by a unit that can always do something? Even if my Psychophage is not in combat, it is giving out an aura of 6 up feel no pain. Now, I'll let you all decide how you feel about a 6 up feel no pain as a roll, where it's like, is rolling 6s to not die that beneficial? Is spending the points for that to happen beneficial? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But we're going to talk about that and where that kicks into effect even better. And then at the same time, here's the other thing where I talk about units that are doing a thing for you no matter what. If I put my Psychophage to score me containment over here, if I put my Psychophage over here just to start screening something, if I take my Psychophage, and I guess I should be using my mouse, if I'm just, wherever I throw my Psychophage, it's doing something for me. It is giving a 6 up feel no pain aura, and probably making it a little bit tougher for my opponent to do anything. Literally anything. Are they trying to remove me? Remove my units? Yeah, it's making it a little bit more inconvenient for that. Are they trying to take a point off of me that the Psychophage is at? Maybe the Psychophage probably isn't alone, and that's an additional 3 OC that they have to account for. Now, the Psychophage has a 120 by 92 millimeter base. This isn't the most amazing thing to try to maneuver around the board, but it also isn't the hardest. So, I do tend to sing the praises of the Psychophage a little bit in the fact that for 9-3-10, with a 5 up Feel No Pain and 95 points, and has the potential to do random damage. I don't. That's the other thing. It is random damage. It is not consistent whatsoever. But when you take something with devastating wounds, that means that no matter what, there is an off chance that I hit a fucking 6, and now something has taken 2 damage that didn't expect to get punched by a Psychophage. If it's a Psyker, all of a sudden I am in a convenient spot, while giving out an aura, while possibly scoring me points. That's also why I still have talked about the Norns. Whereas, like, yeah, you don't need 50 million models to score you these tiny points and then they immediately die. There's some value in your unit staying alive an additional turn or additional phase that your opponent is not accounting for. If you take you take 85 points of gargoyles, right? Yes, they have deep strike, probably scored you something, jammed up your opponent, and I'm not saying that gargoyles are a bad unit whatsoever. But I'm saying at the same time, they're probably not going to be here for the next phase, right? Probably not going to happen. Now, if I spend an additional 10 points, and maybe it's just a fucking, I put it in reserves, because this is the other thing. I think all of us need to think about reserves a little bit. Not in the sense that, no, I'm the only one thinking about reserves, but genuinely, I think we all look and go, fuck, I guess I could have just left that in reserves, huh? And then been better off. You know, deep reserves without deep strike feels worse. But I think it's something that I myself know I've definitely been like, huh, I guess I could have just put this in reserves instead of trying to start it on the board for whatever reason, right? So, if it's something like that, and it still has a 12-inch flamer, is it going to pick up a lot? No, but in the off chance you can pick me up one more model and make the rest of my life a little bit easier, yeah, fuck it, why not? And again, as last resort, as things may be, there is still the off chance that your opponent walks by your Psychophage thinking it's all dandy, and you just use your flamer to overwatch them, and now you have fucked their plan just a little bit. It's just inconvenient. Is it inconvenient to carry sometimes? Arguably. Not the worst, but eh. But it is just peak inconvenience for your opponent. It does inconvenient damage when it spikes. It inconveniences your opponent's damage output or your efficiencies, all that. It it is a unit that has OC, and a 5 of Feel No Pain. Your opponent will have to dedicate a little bit more than they expected into the Psychophage and the things around it. So that's why, before we get into further about like all the where, the how, the when, the why, about where to take it, the Psychophage, 95 points. It gets a pass for me. Definitely gets a pass for me. Would I wish it was cheaper? Always, of course. If it gets any cheaper, I mean, I cheer, but at the same time, I don't think it will, and I could understand why it won't, right? Now, why are we talking about the Psychophage? What happened that the Psychophage is the current topic of today's video? Well, over here in Synaptic Nexus, we had Ryan bring two of those things. They brought two Psychophages with Triple Norn Emissary and Squad as always. Now, at first, you read Synaptic Nexus Triple Norn Emissary and go, yeah, checks out. The thing that did catch me off guard was not just one Psychophage, it is two. We have seen single Psychophage before, actually. Spacebug Studios, with their Tyrant Guard list, did a Psychophage because that's when Reinforced Hive Node was better. So it's not like Psychophage is completely absent from Synaptic Nexus ever. We've seen this. We've seen at least one. Seeing a second one goes, oh, huh? And we've talked about this on video. There's a longer video, not specifically about this, but I guess in the Psychophage video I should say, uh, Synaptic Nexus, you have access to a 5-up invuln for a turn. If a lot of your units now have an invuln, Feel No Pain, in any way, shape, or form, the game gets tougher for your opponent. Norns with 4-up invones, Zoes with 4-up invones, Psychophage giving Zoe's a 6-up feel no pain on top of that. Zoe's giving the Psychophage a 6-up invone outside of that 5-up invone turn. Pretty good. Norn emissaries having the 4-up invone and now getting a 6-up feel no pain until they get to their objective to get a 5-up feel no pain. A 22-man brick of Neurogots that is now a 5-up invone, 6-up feel no pain. Annoying as hell. Everybody hates Zodgrod. So, Zodgrod and the Gretchen. So, that's to say, I can see the method and the madness. I think if I'm totally off base, that is entirely possible, but that looks annoying as fuck. And of course, we've seen Psychophage with it being a harvester and assimilation swarm. Sam Pope talked about this list 3 months ago, double Psychophage, and I think at the time I was like, now why the fuck would you take a second one? Hey, works out, right? Um, now that the points are different for the exocrine, I wonder if there's a world where you drop an exocrine. And you go, why would you drop an exocrine here? I wonder if there's a world where, again, I will always advocate for more rippers in assimilation swarm. It's kind of silly to me. We're not doing that. But, I think there's a certain point where you go, all right, I have output. Would it make my life easier if I just added even more bodies to, of course, as we know, Sam Pope, bringing bodies? So, fuck it. Maybe. But yes, we've seen double Psychophage even already, and I guess there, in before. Now, I guess I should check because I do want to see Crusher Stampede. Was this the list? Or any of these the list? I don't think so. Yeah, no. Do do do. I've seen Rippers here. That was kind of funny. But yes, we've seen Psychophage in other lists before. Double Psychophage is a bit interesting. And now that I've already talked about why I don't mind bringing at least one, do you bring two? Do you bring two for the coverage? I want to talk about units that do things, right? It's worth something to note that units. I think the game is also progressing in a state where people are realizing if you spend 300 points on a unit that only scores points, it isn't points efficient, right? Shocker. Um, if you take something like a Locust Destroyer for 35 points, yeah, it's a 35-point distraction. You score some points, your opponent probably has to deal with it before you score some more points, or it just tickles somebody's fancy, unfancily, right? Pyrivores do the same for us for 40 points, things like that. So, yeah, it's definitely higher up in points, but at a certain point, haha, you have to wonder how much you're bringing to do things that can be achieved by something else that might survive for the next turn. Are you bringing a single boss Snickrot and, or any of the lone ops? And I think the game is also, because of how much stuff is being put on the table lately, I think there's a bit of lone op being less favorable. I know that lone up for most of Leviathan, if not all of Leviathan, was like, where's your lone ops? You need your lone ops. And then you look at Tyranids and it's like, well, we have lone ops, but all we can do is score points at this point in time. Uh, because of rules and everything before we got updates and yada yada yada. But now, what if my shit isn't a lone up? What if it's a brick of people that I spent 70 points on to stand over there? 75 points. Not even a brick, but like a squad of models that did that. What if it's a 95-point monster that no matter what it's doing is doing something for me and inconveniencing my opponent? Then, going over here, sorry, Colin, I'm talking about your list once more. Saw a 4 and 2 Warrior Bioform Onslaught list. Now, it is not surprising again. I think everybody, when we saw Warrior Bioform Onslaught, you said, alright, slap a Psychophage in there, call it a day. Give them 5-up Invul and 6-up Feel No Pain. Cool. Keep them alive. Colin over here did something interesting, and would you guess it? Double Psychophage. double Psychophage. Um, there's also a Maliceptor and Tyrannifexes, and it is something to be said that when you start playing any detachment that is an invasion fleet, having a feel no pain is better than not having a feel no pain, right? If that feel no pain costs you 95 points, if you can get decent enough coverage on the units it applies to, maybe. So a second psychophage is kind of wild. I won't go further into this list again because I talked about this enough on the channel. I know Colin, if you see any of those, like why are we talking about my list again? Damn. Leave me alone. But it is still an interesting result with a detachment that we particularly have not seen. So going, I believe it was 4 and 2 with double psychophage. Maybe double psychophage is the wave. Synaptic Nexus, Assimilation Swarm, Warrior Bioform Onslaught, all performing fairly well with double Psychophage. Now, let's talk about why I like single Psychophage and if there's space for it to be in some of these things. Starting with Invasion Fleet, of course. Would you put a Psychophage in Invasion Fleet? A previous me probably said no. Current me probably says yes. Why? You already have access to a 5-up Field of Pain. That's correct. But when you take the ability to repeat that several times over, that's when it gets inconvenient as all hell for your opponent. If you have Psychophages that have 5-up Feel No Pains, let's just say Old One Eye has a 5-up Feel No Pain. Speaking to older Invasion Fleet list, the John Lennon list, right? Having Old One Eye in here. Now, mind you, that included the Carnifexes, and at this point in time, maybe drop the Carnifex crew, like the Carnifexes, as the bodyguards, and take Old One Eye for cheaper, right? For 20 points cheaper, right? And now you have 3 models with a 5-up Feel No Pain. 2 of them have Flamers, which does not benefit from the sustained lethal or precision over here, in Invasion Fleet. But what it does do is that in melee, you have access to sustained hits 1, devastating wounds, and anti-psyker 4 up. Probably don't use lethal hits if that's the case, right? Now, if your opponent only has big monsters, then yes, you probably want to do something different on that front. And even to then, you can change the hyper adaptation. Oh, you can add an additional hyper adaptation so that you could put the sustain back on. And all of these things. Now, even further, I don't like having to necessarily waste rapid regeneration for Invasion Fleet. If I don't have to, I won't. So that means if Psychophage can come into Invasion Fleet to keep some Endless Multitude units alive, yeah, my 20-man brick of Hormagaunts, I could have spent the 5 of Feel No Pain on them. Or, I could do nothing, let them get shot at with a 6 of Feel No Pain, mildly inconvenience my opponent, and then on my next turn, regen a little bit more. While I still have my 5-up Feel No Pain for my Maliceptor that is walking into their face. And then if you try to remove the Psychophage or Old One Eye that is behind the Maliceptor, guess what? 5-up Feel No Pains for them. I think there's a or, because we've seen less Maliceptor, more Norn Emissary, the 5-up Feel No Pain for my Norn until it gets to its point to then get a 5-up Feel No Pain. So, there is a world where Invasion Fleets, you just run 5-up Feel No Pain the game. Norn Emissary, Old One Eyes, Psychophages, Maliceptor benefiting from rapid regeneration, all the likes, and call it a day, and then fuck it, Turvy with adaptive biology. Yeah, there's a world where you just annoy the hell out of your opponent with 5-up Feel No Pain Invasion Fleet, and then do semi-decent output with a couple of things there. 2 Psychophages? Maybe. I don't know. Apparently there's more to it than I would have ever imagined. Going over to Crusher, something that I do like, once again, Psychophage in. Now, I my brain is too hyper fixated on wanting to do double Death Star Crusher Stampede, i.e., Think Tank and the Carnifex crew. But if I find that the Carnifex crew doesn't treat me well enough, I think I do drop the Carnifex crew for double Psychophage. And what's my points on that? 150, free of, yeah, maybe double Psychophage, Maliceptor. If that's the next progression. And why Crusher Stampede? Well, no shit, it's a monster, but also, Crusher Stampede is a little bit finicky at times for the detachment rule, where if you're below starting, you get +1 to hit. That's fine, that's easy to manage. It's the do you get +1 to wound often? That kicks in when your monster is below half strength. And in a detachment that doesn't give you a lot of survivability outside of Savage Roar, which is -1 to hit, possibly -1 to wound in the fight phase. Let's go down here. If that specific battle shock test is failed, that is induced by Savage Roar. On top of that, right? Uh, then that's your bonus survivability. But outside of that, good luck. Hopefully, your monster profile is a monster profile. Now, if you have psychophages in there, there's the slight chance that you live just a little bit longer to make it so that you actually get to the +1 to wound for being below half strength. There's a world where that happens because you roll just enough 6-up feel no pains to stay alive. Double psychophage? I don't know. But if we're doing it for the sake of covering every fucking unit around, maybe. And I guess it is to say that the Psychophage has Deadly Demise 1. And one of the things with Crusher Stampede is, well, if you can just bring something that has a tiny itchy bitchy Deadly Demise, you can auto detonate with Corrosive Viscera once your shit goes pop and turn on all of your shit. So if this is the Psychophage that hung back, but your opponent realizes that it might score you some points and they don't want that to keep happening, or they realize that it's keeping your other shit just alive a little bit too much, or that it might, and they target the Psychophage, you auto detonate around your shit and maybe pick up a battle line unit of your other opponents, right? For one, turn on your army, so now that they are below starting strength, outside of course, the bricks of things, like if you decide to bring Hive Tyrant, backslash Swarm Lord with Tyrant Guard, or the Think Tank or the Carnifex crew, right? Uh, turn on everybody else that is a one model unit below half strength, everybody +1 to hit for the cost of 1 CP and 1 damage, and then start having fun. So, there's that. There is that. And then if you can play maybe a double Psychophage has the ability to give you a little bit of carelessness, I guess, and how if you bring like triple Neurolictor or what you did when we did that, you could put one further up because you knew that you had a second and third to back you up. So maybe on the Psychophage front, you don't have to leave 95 points perfectly positioned and to score you some points for that aura to do the things on the things you want. Maybe you play one a little bit more aggressive to piss off your opponent slightly because now they have to get through it, not only wound wise, but probably physically. Probably can't walk through it. Now, if they have fly, whatever, right? But something like that, and then keep one covering the shit that you really don't necessarily want to get popped, like maybe a Tyrannifex that already is T12 to 16 wounds. Your opponent is trying to go toe to toe with that rupture cannon, and then they realize on top of the blank, there's a feel no pain. The once per game blank, mind you, but there's that. So maybe there's a world where double Psychophage comes over to Crusher Stampede. Unending Swarm, just an honorable mention in the fact that we saw Psychophage and Unending Swarm. If there was to be a world where people start playing Unending Swarm again, and GW does not look likely to touch this ever again, this edition, maybe, maybe, maybe you completely forego. Well, if you ask me, we should have forgotten Turvy and the Termagants a while ago. I think if there's a world in which you drop Turvy and the Termagants and instead go with Hormagaunts, uh, Winged Hive Tyrant, as we've seen with Sam Pope, and Psychophages, yeah, there might be a world where double Psychophage makes a play back here. But I'll move on because Unending Swarm is Unending Swarm. And then finally, Vanguard Onslaught. Is there ever a world in which Vanguard Onslaught brings a Psychophage? Let alone two, right? I think it's worth discussing in the same instance as to the funny, right? What's the funny? The funny is that I've talked about how maybe bring Venom Thropes in Vanguard Onslaught when everybody was writing the triple uh Stealer Bomb, triple Warrior Brick list. I was like, well, that's a lot of infantry. You might as well bring Venom Thropes to keep all of those stealth -1 to hit to help them get to melee. So there's a world where if that list were to return, you then add Psychophage for stealth and feel no pains on these infantry models the same way you did for these models. And, well, going to back to Sam Pope's list, these models over in Assimilation Swarm, right? So maybe there's a world where in Vanguard Onslaught you do it. And does it have any bonuses from being in here? No. You can see it brood it on a board edge turn 1 to make it more frustrating for your opponent. But, if you, or even if you forego, I don't know why I want to say that word today so much, but even if you let the Warriors go, finally, please, uh, and do convert to Von Ryan's Leapers and Raveners, they still do it, and Von Ryan's Leapers, here's the other thing with Vanguard Onslaught, where it's like, yeah, maybe the other, if you're not going to build that type of list, that specific list, a lot of the Vanguard Invaders have stealth. So do you need the Venom Thrope that much if you're not bringing a lot of the ones that don't, right? So if you then invest into the Von Ryan's Leapers and Raveners and Lictors, right? Maybe the things that already have stealth. I know Raveners don't, but they have deep strike, keep themselves alive off the board for a turn or two. Uppy downy, some shit there. And build that style of list. Maybe Psychophage can make its way into Vanguard Onslaught as well. And that'd be some funny shit. And actually, thinking about it, you're bringing the Think Tank, Neurotyrant, and the Zoes in Vanguard Onslaught anyway. So help keep them alive as well. Fuck it, maybe there's a world. Maybe there's a world. So yeah, I think Psychophage is worth experimenting with. Again, double? Maybe. I gotta admit, I don't think I ever would have fathomed double Psychophage outside of Assimilation Swarm. And to that point, hell, Assimilation Swarm, when people are still doing things with that and like trying to figure out all the who-ops, the woo-op the bams. But to that point, talking once more to the cost of the detachment or the perceived cost of that detachment, triple Psychophage, triple Ripper Swarms is cheap as hell. You can find all of them for dirt cheap on things like eBay. So, at the end of the day, if you're just trying to build 2,000 points for yourself and play a detachment, Psychophage isn't the worst thing you can do. So, hey, if you like the video, like it. Got a comment for me, comment. And until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.